So you're telling me that all of the cities in the Kurdistan region of Iraq have been dumping toxic, untreated sewage into the rivers for decades and no one's done anything to stop it?
That's exactly the case, and it's really the most inexcusable failure of governance.
Welcome to this week's Iraq Briefing, where we discuss the top stories shaping Iraq today. I'm Eric Gustafson.
And I am Omar Nadawi.
Today, we're discussing the utterly disastrous problem facing Iraq's water supply, the dumping of untreated sewage by cities into the country's rivers. It's not only a nuisance, it's a major, sometimes deadly threat to public health, as well as for the economy and basic survival for a country dealing with the worst drought in almost a century. But this week, there have been some promising developments in this otherwise terrible situation. So, Omar, you've been doing research on this. Can you quickly explain the problem and bring us up to speed on some of these recent developments?
Yeah, it's a problem that's been going on for quite some time, actually decades. Iraq does not have enough infrastructure to collect, move, and treat the wastewater that generates in communities across the country. So as a result, a lot of sewage water just goes directly into Iraq's rivers, polluting what little water that Iraq has. Conflicts have played a big role in this. A lot of the facilities that Iraq built in the 70s were destroyed in consecutive wars, starting with the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s, in the Gulf War in 1991, and many of what remained of them were looted or neglected and went into disrepair during the 90s and early 2000s. And there has not been enough really any effort to rebuild the system, the infrastructure in a way that meets the growing demand because of growing population and basically there's more sewage water that needs to be treated, but not enough facilities to treat it. And the country has about 72 facilities that treat sewage water, but these facilities can only handle about two-thirds of the water that they receive. So about 1 million cubic meters of sewage water per day bypasses these facilities and just goes directly into the rivers. And this does not count all the cities that do not have wastewater treatment facilities, like the cities of the Kurdistan region. So, in addition to this 1 million cubic meters of water per day, there's an unknown amount, a vast amount from many provinces that just also goes directly into open fields, into dry riverbeds, and directly into rivers, polluting Iraq's water resources. There are more facilities today than there were, say, 10 years ago, and there's continuous effort to build more of them. But the gap in infrastructure, the decades of poor investments, mismanagement, corruption, and neglect resulted in a growing gap that is hard to bridge. In Baghdad, for example, the system that was built to handle a population, the needs of a population of about 40 million people, is now handling the needs of 10 million people, which means the system is always running beyond its capacity and just sending wastewater down the rivers. Power shortages also mean that facilities don't work all the time. There are problems with lack of trained crews that can handle, operate, and maintain these facilities. So there's a lot of problems that prevent the system, despite continuing investments, from running smoothly. But again, the biggest problem I think that we have identified through our research and thinking about this problem is that the provinces of the Kurdistan region, which are upstream, have nothing at all in terms of ability to process sewage water. So it just flows downstream. Now, as you mentioned earlier, there is some good news in this regard, and that came about, I think, a week ago, when there was an announcement that the Kurdistan region, with support from JICA, that's Japan's International Cooperation Agency, have launched a major project to build wastewater treatment facilities in and around the city of Erbil. So this project with 8 stages is going to eventually serve 3 million inhabitants of the Erbil city and its surroundings. But, it's going to take a lot of time. The first stage alone is going to take 3 years, and that's going to serve about 200,000 residents of this area at a cost of more than $200 million. So it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resources. but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that's a very welcome step in the right direction. It's a big city. Erbil is really growing. So you touched on this a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about what have the cities of the Kurdistan region been doing to get rid of their waste up until this point?
It's an unmitigated disaster, to be honest. I did not really have an idea how things were, how bad things were until we talked to environmental activists from the region, people like our friends at Waterkeepers Iraq, to see where actually that water goes. And basically, the reality of the situation is that this wastewater gets channeled into riverbeds. Sometimes these are seasonal riverbeds or just rivers that run through the cities. And as the river passes through new residential developments and farms and industrial facilities, more wastewater gets dumped into it. And to illustrate how disgusting this problem is. So you have rivers like the Tanjiro, which flows into the Diyala River and eventually into the Tigris near Baghdad, is really extremely polluted. It's not drinkable, fishable, or swimmable, as our friend Nabil would say, because of the concentration of sewage water that runs through it. And the same situation happens in Erbil. I've tracked through satellite images a lot of these riverbeds that have dried up and became simply open sewage canals that collect the sewage water and channels it into the Great Zab River and again into the Tigris, poisoning the water for millions and millions of people downstream. And that's the situation in other cities in the Kurdistan region. I was really shocked when I saw, for example, Lake Dokan, which is one of the most beautiful and prized destinations in the Kurdistan region, especially around Suleimania. It's a very pretty lake. And as I was looking around the area in satellite images, I noticed this stream of black sewage water that's just pouring directly uncontrolled into the reservoir. So it's a really disgusting problem, and it is unfathomable that this is allowed to continue to happen while Iraq is dealing with its worst drought in 90 years.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something that, you really need some strong leadership on, and you really needed that decades ago. The sooner the better. I think at this point, Iraq, the Kurdistan region, there's been enough stability and economic growth for long enough that there's no reason the government can't be tackling this problem and making a lot faster progress on it. So it's welcome that we're starting to see that in Erbil, but it needs to clearly happen with all of the cities across the Kurdistan region. So just a couple of quick things just to add to what you shared. Across Iraq, I know one of the issues is that when you look at the wastewater treatment systems that are online from the research you've been doing and others environmentalists have been doing, it's clear that in some of the major cities, they're getting some of the wastewater treatment facilities back online. But in the more rural areas, there's nothing. So that's still a problem across federal Iraq. And that's certainly a problem, of course, across the Kurdistan region where you don't even have it in the cities. The water then that is being used for agriculture oftentimes is contaminated. And there's even waterborne diseases. There's been a number of outbreaks of cholera in Sulaymaniyah governorate. So this is in the Kurdistan region. So even upstream, there's enough contamination that you have outbreaks of waterborne diseases like cholera. I know there was a terrible outbreak in 2007 with a number of deaths. There was another outbreak in 2022, and there's even more recently in 2023, there was an outbreak. But when you go downstream, the problems compound to the point when you get to Basra, there have been severe problems with, water crisis in Basra. In 2018, over 118,000 residents in Basra were hospitalized because they got sick from the water. And I know that right now in Basra, because of this huge drought that Iraq has been facing and the scarcity of water, it's gotten so bad that because there's a less of a flow of water coming downstream, the seawaters are rising. And so that's also affecting things, but also the level of contaminants in the water in Basra are so bad. They've even had to shut down water treatment facilities because it can't handle it. I believe residents in Basra are reporting only having water for about an hour. And the water that they do have, they can't use it for washing or anything. There's been an outbreak of at least 30,000 so far of residents in Basra and the surrounding areas getting sick with all kinds of skin diseases because of the water right now. So there's a tremendous need, I think, to prioritize this. We will be releasing a paper soon, so be on the lookout for it. We'll definitely share it through this channel when we release it, but it looks at the problem of wastewater across Iraq, and we make a number of recommendations that need to happen. Speaking of, can you speak a little bit to that now, Omar, from your research?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly an awareness in Iraq that this is a problem. And that's why the Iraqi government has been investing large amounts of money and time into building wastewater treatment facilities across the country, except not in the Kurdistan region. So in 2010, there were about 44 wastewater treatment facilities across federal Iraq of various sizes. That number grew to 72 by 2023. So there is definitely progress in improving the infrastructure. But there is a breakdown in policy coordination between Baghdad and Erbil. There's a financial crisis that has crippled Erbil's ability to build and to invest in its own infrastructure. And but when I say Erbil, I mean the Kurdistan region at large. When you have financial problems, you're not going to prioritize things like that in a place like Iraq, where the economy depends on the government paying public sector salaries. And when you don't pay salaries, people riot on the streets. Your priorities are going to be paying your employees. Your priorities are going to be paying the oil companies that sustain the oil industry, that sustains the economy. Very little money is going to remain available for things that are seen as not essential, not an emergency, like wastewater treatment, until it becomes an emergency. And this is, I think, the main issue that Baghdad and Erbil officials in both places need to really pay attention to. This is not an oil dispute. This is not where people stake their egos. This is not about who gets to control what. This is about the glass of water that every Iraqi is going to drink, and whether it's going to be there or not, and whether it's going to be clean or not. When Baghdad works with Erbil to invest in the Kurdistan region's wastewater treatment infrastructure, it is actually investing in the public health of people in Baghdad and in Basra.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to share a few things, a few additional thoughts. Right now, Epic is working with environmental groups on the ground in Iraq, one of which, of course, you mentioned earlier, Waterkeepers Iraq. They are working with a guy that runs a machine shop, a really interesting guy, who is building a wastewater treatment system that is movable. You can actually take it apart, load it up on trucks, and take it places. And the reason that they're doing this project, I think it's brilliant, is to demonstrate it to municipalities across the Kurdistan region, and even to go down to Baghdad and to demonstrate it in Baghdad. And the idea is that, look, the expertise, the resources, the capacity to establish wastewater systems, even for serving smaller populations, that already exists within Iraq. It's not rocket science. It can be done. You don't have to wait for, well, USAID's not there anymore,
Mhm.
but you don't have to wait for the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese, some contractor to come in and build it for you. You already have the expertise and resources within the country to be able to do it. You just need to do it. It needs to become a priority. That's a project that we just funded, or actually we contributed to. We were funding part of it. It's a big project. And so that's, I think that's going to be exciting to be able to demonstrate that, and hopefully to get more cities to get their wastewater management back online. Also, we're working with this great researcher, Winthrop Rogers, who's looking at agriculture and drip irrigation and other water saving technologies, and how that can also be an important part of the effort. Because it's not just about, talking to neighboring countries like Turkey and Iran so that the flow of water coming into the country is better, but it's also looking at water management within Iraq. That's a big part of the problem. And one of the biggest users of that fresh water are farmers, it's agriculture, it's the agricultural sector. So if you can use less, if the agricultural sector can start to use a lot less water, then that benefits all Iraqis. That report will also be coming out, and we'll be sharing it through this channel soon. So can you speak, Omar, if you could talk kind of the bigger picture when it comes to water?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to blame climate change or to blame Turkey's dam construction program for Iraq's water problems, but that really is only part of the picture. Like you said, you have to work on every single aspect of the issue to make sure that you have a holistic solution to the problem. You're trying to mitigate at every possible juncture. So you mentioned water diplomacy, and we actually a while back we produced a report about the problems affecting Iraq's water diplomacy and with Turkey and Iran and Syria as well, and why has it not been as effective as one would hope for. You got to be smart about how you use the water that you have, and also when you have wastewater to be able to recycle it and put it back into service. So I think you got to work on all these three levels, or at least three levels, if not more, through securing more resources, using them more smartly, and making sure that they are not just depleted or wasted, and that they are recycled and can be reused to maximize the benefit of what's available. And that's the only way to, I think, to have a more sustainable water future, a more sustainable water outlook for a country that's one of the five most impacted by climate change in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, it's not about just the supply side, climate change, less rainfall, issues upstream with dams. It's also about the demand
Hmm.
side and how to use water more efficiently.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Omar. That's it for this episode of your Iraq briefing. You can follow us at enablingpeace.org. Also, be sure to subscribe to our regular weekly reports, the Iraq Security Humanitarian Monitor. We'll include a link down below. We will continue to be following this water crisis in Iraq. Right now, it's the worst drought in 80 years. So it's having a real impact, and we'll continue to follow and report on that. Also, look for two reports that will be coming out soon, one on wastewater and the other on drip agriculture and other water saving technologies. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next week, masalama.
Masalam.